Good evening, folks. It's Mike from Buccaneer again, coming at you with some more Docker fun. Now, some of you guys have emailed in and said, loving the videos, wish we had better sound quality, which we are working on. This one should be better. But, you keep talking about Docker. What's a container? So, I figured I'd go ahead and just take a step back and answer that basic question. Remember, there's nothing wrong with basic questions. Unfortunately, they often don't have basic answers. So, a container, first let's talk about what it is not. It is not a virtual machine. So where a virtual machine, you have a host operating system, let's say Red Hat, that you might have other operating systems running on as virtual machines, right? They each contain their own operating system and full stack. So you could have a CentOS distro running on a Red Hat host, or an Ubuntu distro running on an Ubuntu host or a Red Hat host. If you're using Azure at all, Microsoft Azure, you probably have an Ubuntu distro, or rather virtual machine, right, a VM, running on a Windows IaaS host because, Azure is Windows, right? The disadvantage, or the thing to understand there, is that the virtual machine actually is replicating all the resource intensiveness of the operating system, right? So the host machine, that is the actual operating system installed on the metal, is using whatever resources it needs to use and not sharing them with the VM. So what that means is the VM requires a lot of duplication, right? It has its own kernel, it has its whole own environment. Think about it like a Russian doll. So it's operating systems and operating systems and operating systems. A container is a little different. And when I say a little different, I mean a lot different, right? So the nice thing about a container is that it can actually, in addition to being able to stand alone, it is able to share resources a little better with the host operating system while still isolating your application from its surrounding. So, for example, one of the reasons you might want a container is that you have a Java app and you don't want it to be tied to what version of Java is on the host machine. Well, the container would accomplish that for you. The difference here between that and a VM, and a VM also would accomplish that for you, right? In a virtual machine, you might have, Java 1.8, but on the host, you might have Java 1.6 or, not Java at all. The difference here is the architecture. Now, rather than having, again, each operating system replicated, Docker, or i.e. any container software, but let's talk about Docker here, is running directly on the host's OS. And above that, you have the bins and the libraries. And I'm going to share a link in the notes here that give you a great kind of infographic of how this works. But the idea is that instead of duplicating the OS layer every time you have a container, just like you would have, which is what you would do every time you have a VM, you're actually just using the host OS, but containerizing only the aspects of your application that you need. And I know that is a huge mouthful, so let me kind of pull back a little bit, right? The container is not a full virtual machine. In fact, it is not a virtual machine at all. So Docker is not a version of Linux. Docker is not an operating system. So where Ubuntu, Alpine, Fedora, Red Hat, CentOS are all versions of Linux, they're all Linux distributions. If you've ever heard the term Linux distro, that's what people are talking about. Docker is not that. So when you are running Docker on, let's say, a Red Hat host, you are not virtualizing the Linux kernel again, right? You are using the Linux kernel that is on the Red Hat host. But if you are running a virtual machine on that Red Hat host, you have now virtualized an entire additional Linux kernel and all the subsystems and everything that goes with that. Therefore, using more resources, right? So the idea here is very 10,000 feet in the air, simply put, to get the advantages of isolating your application and its dependencies without that duplication of resource requirements and the obvious cost and speed penalty that you might pay for that. If you're familiar at all with BSD, containers are basically a lot like BSD jails, right? Same idea. BSD people don't kill me. Yeah, I know that there are differences in the implementations, and I know some BSD folks will die on the hill for jails, but from a conceptual perspective, containers are a lot like jails. Um, so I hope that helped you. If you still have more questions about this, I'm happy to answer them either in the comments or you can go to buccaneer.io. I'd also ask you to take a look. We just redesigned our entire site at buccaneer.io. So if you like that, just let me know. Give me a thumbs up. If you like this channel and more quick tips or more kind of code along tutorials like we have in some of the previous videos, go ahead and subscribe. I think it's like over there-ish, somewhere. It's like down this way. And yeah, reach out again. We also have a great guide on getting started with Docker Compose, which is simply put, it's a good way to architect, or rather orchestrate all your containers, right? Get it, compose, orchestrate. So take a look at that. That will be, again, down here somewhere, down there in that general direction in the show notes. Thank you so much and have a great night.